I never thought my heart could break at work. It was a Monday morning, and I saw him, standing there with her, smiling like I didn't exist. The air felt heavier that day. Every glance a reminder of what I lost. I had trusted him more than anyone, and now, seeing them together, I realized some betrayals are invisible until they hit you in the gut. I had to make a choice: watch silently or fight back. It all began on a regular Monday morning. The office smelled like fresh coffee and printer ink. I walked in smiling, greeting everyone like it was any other day. He was already there, leaning casually against his desk, and I felt my chest tighten. Our team laughed about the weekend, sharing small stories. Nothing seemed unusual. I thought I knew everyone at work, but sometimes the people closest to you hide the deepest secrets. I placed my coffee on my desk, glancing at my calendar. A meeting with him and the team was first. He caught my eyes, smiled, and I felt a flutter. There was always something magnetic about him, something I couldn't explain. We had shared late nights on projects, endless brainstorming sessions. I trusted him more than anyone in that office. I remember the first time we stayed back to finish a report. He offered me his sandwich, even though he barely knew me outside of work. I laughed, thinking it was a small gesture, but it felt significant. It was a gesture that built trust. Layer by layer, I started to rely on him for advice, for support, for laughter. He remembered my birthday without prompting, brought a small cake once. These small moments, they make people feel safe. I felt like we had a connection that was rare, almost like family. I even told him about my childhood, stories I never shared with colleagues. And he listened, nodding, offering comfort, never judgment. Outside work, life was predictable, normal. I had a small apartment, a quiet weekend routine, nothing spectacular, but it was mine. On Fridays, the team would gather for drinks, casual smiles and jokes. He always saved a seat next to me, never forced conversation, just presence. Presence can be louder than words sometimes. I remember a particular Friday. It was raining lightly, the streets shiny with reflections. We all laughed at the awkward elevator ride. He bumped into my shoulder lightly, and I felt a spark. Not romantic, just awareness. But maybe that's how it begins. Awareness. Tiny cracks. Unnoticed at first. My lunch breaks were usually solitary, but I started joining him. We'd eat sandwiches on the rooftop, overlooking the city. The wind would tousle our hair, and we'd talk about nothing important. The comfort of someone who understands. It's addictive. I told him about my weekend plans, my favorite shows. He shared his hobbies. We laughed over trivial mistakes. There was a sense of camaraderie, like two old friends reconnecting after years. He seemed genuinely interested in my life, asking questions, remembering answers. I began to count on his presence, more than I admitted to myself. Yet, beneath the laughter, subtle hints of tension existed. I noticed him glance at her sometimes. A colleague from the design team. They exchanged smiles. Brief, polite, but something lingered. I brushed it off, thinking I was imagining things. Jealousy has a way of clouding perception. Sometimes, I caught him looking at me differently. Unreadable expression. I wanted to trust completely, but a small knot of unease started forming. We all have instincts. Quiet alarms. Mine was whispering now. Still, I told myself to ignore it. We were friends, colleagues, nothing more. One afternoon, the office got unusually busy. Tight deadlines everywhere. He stayed late again. I stayed late too. We shared a desk lamp, reviewing documents. I noticed him check his phone a few times. Quick glances, hidden smiles. I thought it was normal. Work stress makes people check messages. Right. I didn't question it then. A decision I would later regret. Weekends came, and I shared small updates over text. He replied with care. I told him about my sister visiting. He seemed genuinely happy for me. These exchanges became a habit. Comforting, reliable, predictable. The kind of reliability you take for granted until it's gone. The team celebrated a project milestone. Champagne and laughter everywhere. He raised a glass, eyes locking with mine for a fraction of a second. I felt warmth, belonging, a subtle thrill of recognition. At that moment, I thought nothing could shake this bond. Nothing. But the first shadow of doubt crept in. Small, almost invisible. A passing comment. "Oh, I think she's very clever," referring to her, not me. I smiled politely, but inside, unease stirred. Something in my chest whispered, "Watch carefully." After work, I walked home slowly, the city lights reflecting on wet pavement. I tried to dismiss my worries, focusing on my favorite podcast, but his presence lingered in my mind, a mix of comfort and confusion. I didn't know then that the same person I trusted most could become the one to hurt me. The week ended, and life seemed unchanged. Routine. Ordinary. Yet, small cracks had begun forming. Unnoticed by anyone but me. I would see them later for what they truly were. Harbingers of betrayal. And that Friday evening, I had a feeling, a premonition. Something was about to break. Monday came again. The office felt heavier than usual. I walked in, coffee in hand, pretending everything was normal. He was there already, typing quickly on his laptop. Eyes focused, almost distant. I waved. He nodded, but didn't smile like before. Something in the air had shifted. Subtle, almost invisible. I shook my head. Maybe I was overthinking. Meetings dragged on. Numbers and graphs filling the screen. I glanced at him from across the table. He laughed at a joke, but it wasn't the same. His laughter felt hollow, forced, a mask hiding something. I tried to brush it off, concentrate on my own work, but the feeling lingered, an itch at the back of my mind. We had lunch in the cafeteria. I noticed her again, the colleague from design. They talked quietly, leaning closer than necessary. I looked away quickly, heart tightening, disbelief creeping in. Was I imagining it? Was I being paranoid? I wanted to trust him. I really did. But my instinct screamed. That evening, our team had a small celebration for a client win. He came over to my side, smiling, friendly, casual. I wanted to ask, but the words got stuck in my throat. Instead, I laughed, trying to sound natural, hiding my unease. Later that week, something happened that changed everything. I found a note on my desk. Simple. Folded neatly. His handwriting. "Can we talk after work?" it said. My stomach sank, excitement mixed with nervous dread. I didn't know then that this meeting would plant the seeds of betrayal. We met in the small lounge, empty except for the flickering fluorescent lights. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I sat down slowly, heart racing. "What's up?" I asked. Casual, though my voice trembled slightly. He hesitated, looking down at his hands. "I've been meaning to tell you something," he said, voice low. "Careful." I nodded, encouraging, trying to hide my curiosity. I've been spending time with someone else," he said suddenly. My mind froze, not understanding at first. "Someone else?" I whispered, the room spinning. "Yes," he admitted, quick, like ripping off a bandage. I blinked, unable to process. I remembered all our lunches, our late nights at work, all the small gestures. Had they meant nothing to him? I wanted to scream, cry, ask why, but I only sat there. Numb. He tried to explain, fumbling words, excuses wrapped in casual tones. "I didn't want to hurt you. It just happened," he said. I wanted to believe him. A part of me did. But another part burned. Betrayal cutting deep. The days after that, I noticed every little thing differently. The way he smiled at her, the way he lingered by her desk. Every laugh felt like a stab. Every glance, a reminder. I had trusted him with everything. And now, that trust lay shattered. I tried to act normal, smile at work, contribute in meetings. But inside, I was boiling, anger mixing with hurt, confusion. I replayed every moment in my head, every shared coffee, every laugh. Was it all a lie? Or had I just been blind? Her presence in the office became unbearable. Small gestures of theirs felt like deliberate taunts. Even casual conversations with colleagues made me anxious. Who knew? Who could I trust? I started watching them, observing their interactions, searching for proof. Every message, every glance. I analyzed, twisted my mind into knots. One Friday, I overheard them talking in the hallway. She laughed at something he said. A soft laugh. Intimate. Familiar. My chest tightened. My hands clenched. I wanted to confront him. Yell. Make him feel the pain. But I didn't. I walked away silently, letting rage simmer. That weekend, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every memory haunted me. Moments we shared. His smile. The trust one had given freely. I kept asking myself, why me? Why now? The thought of revenge started forming. Slowly, quietly, in the darkest corners of my mind. Monday returned, and I acted normal, greeting him, pretending everything was fine. But I was different now. Watching, calculating, learning his patterns. Every detail mattered. The way he typed messages, the way he glanced at her. I knew I had to be careful. One wrong move, and it could all blow up. The tension was unbearable. The office felt like a stage. Everyone oblivious to the storm brewing behind my eyes. I couldn't let anyone know my thoughts. Not friends, not colleagues. This had to be my secret. My plan, my revenge. By Wednesday, I started small pranks. Subtle manipulations. Nothing obvious. A misfiled document here. A delayed email there. It wasn't enough. Not yet. But it was the beginning. The spark that would ignite the fire. I caught him staring at me once. Realization dawning on him. Suspicion flickering in his eyes. But he didn't know what I was planning. He couldn't see the storm in my mind. I smiled politely, masking every thought. Inside, rage and pain churned. A storm ready to break. I realized revenge wouldn't just be satisfying. It would be necessary. Necessary to reclaim my dignity, my self-respect, my sanity. I didn't know exactly how yet, but I knew. It would be calculated, precise, and unforgettable. That Friday evening, the office quiet after the workday. I looked out the window. City lights reflecting my inner turmoil. I knew something was about to happen. Something irreversible. The calm before the storm. The last moment of innocence. And that was when I understood. The bond we had. The trust one gave freely. It had all been broken. Shattered beyond repair. The only thing left was the path I had to take. Revenge. Monday morning arrived. But the office felt like a battlefield. Every step I took. Every glance I gave. It was calculated. I no longer trusted the smiles around me. Even my own reflections seemed wary. The betrayal had changed everything. Even the air seemed heavier. I watched him closely, memorizing his habits, his routines, every little weakness. I started keeping a small notebook, details about meetings, messages, and encounters. It felt obsessive, but necessary. Every note a piece of the puzzle. I couldn't afford mistakes. Not now. Not ever. He still acted normally around me. Polite, friendly even. But I saw the flicker of guilt, brief and subtle. I wondered if he knew, if he suspected. I smiled inside, because he had no idea what was coming. I planned carefully. Every step needed to be precise. I couldn't rush it. Revenge is not about anger. It's about strategy, patience. I thought about the embarrassment he would feel, the same helplessness I had endured. I imagined him realizing, too late, that trust is not something you break without consequence. Lunch breaks became a hunting ground. I observed interactions, took notes mentally, her laughter, the way he leaned in, all became ammunition. I wanted to expose them, but subtly, cleverly. It wasn't just about pain. It was about control, reclaiming what was stolen. I started leaving little signs. Emails slightly misdirected. Documents marked incorrectly. Small things that no one would notice immediately, but enough to create tension. It was thrilling, watching chaos begin to stir. Without anyone suspecting me, I reminded myself, revenge is a game of patience, a silent storm. One afternoon, I found a message on his computer accidentally left open. It was harmless at first glance, friendly words between them. But I noticed a phrase, an inside joke, something intimate. My pulse quickened. This was proof of their closeness and fuel for my plan. I copied the note carefully, no trace left behind, like a ghost in the office. At the same time, I started gathering allies. Not openly, subtle influence. A few colleagues were observant, quiet, noticing the cracks in his behavior. I hinted at inconsistencies, stories not adding up, casual remarks. They began to see patterns, small suspicions forming, exactly what I needed. Every interaction with him became a test, every word a measure of his awareness. I asked questions casually, noted hesitation, little signs of guilt. It gave me a thrill, knowing he was walking on a tightrope without realizing it. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. A company's social event. The perfect stage. An audience of colleagues. And the right conditions for exposure. I watched them from across the room. Laughing, close, careless. My heart pounded. Not with fear, but anticipation. I made my move subtly, whispered hints to colleagues. Small comments. Did you see them together earlier? Looks like they've been hiding something, I said casually. Eyes widened. Curiosity sparked. Rumors started to spread. Silently, I smiled politely, letting the seed grow, like a shadow creeping over the office. He noticed it too, slight unease in his movements. Nervous glances toward me. I felt power. The tables were turning. He couldn't manipulate the situation anymore. The person he had betrayed was now controlling the narrative. Quietly, invisibly, that evening, after everyone left, I stayed back in my office, planning the next phase. Revenge is like a puzzle. Every piece must fit perfectly. Timing is everything. I considered direct confrontation, subtle sabotage, emotional exposure. Each option had risks, but calculated risks yield the sweetest results. I started imagining the climax, the moment he realizes the depth of my strategy. I pictured his face. Shock, regret, humiliation. And for the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt satisfaction. Not joy, not cruelty, but the relief of reclaiming my dignity. Over the next few days, I executed small parts of the plan. Emails redirected, subtle office rumors, strategic exposure of little secrets. Everything was leading to the moment of truth. Everything. I observed reactions carefully, measuring the impact, adjusting as needed. I caught him off guard one afternoon, a misfiled report I knew he needed. He panicked, rushed to fix it, and I watched silently, satisfaction bubbling inside. It was the first taste of control since the betrayal, the slow, deliberate unraveling of his world. Starting small, but growing, unstoppable. At home, I replayed every interaction, every shared smile, every laugh we had before betrayal. It fueled me, sharpened my focus, reminded me of the stakes. He had taken my trust for granted, and now he would learn what it feels like. I made sure no one suspected me. My facade remained perfect, professional, calm, collected. Every gesture, every smile, hiding the storm inside. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, but worth it. I reminded myself constantly, revenge is about patience, precision, inevitability. Finally, the day came for the culmination. The confrontation I had been planning for weeks. The perfect storm, timing, witnesses, and undeniable proof. I felt ready, confident. My emotions aligned with strategy. He didn't see it coming, oblivious to the silent war waging in the office. I could sense panic building in him, little cracks in his composure, and I smiled inside, knowing he was about to learn the cost of betrayal. This was no longer about hurt feelings. It was about justice, reclaiming what had been stolen. Every move, every observation, every subtle manipulation had led to this moment. And soon, he would understand. Completely. The office was quieter than usual that morning. Almost eerie, I arrived early, sipping coffee slowly, mind racing with final details of my plan. Every step, every glance, every word had been calculated. Nothing left to chance. He walked in, unaware, smiling at colleagues. oblivious to the storm around him. I watched him from my desk, pretending normalcy, hiding the anticipation. Inside, I felt a mix of anger and excitement, the culmination of weeks of observation and patience. The day passed slowly. Every interaction felt heightened. Every email and meeting was part of the plan. I stayed composed, professional, calm on the surface. But inside, I was rehearsing every move, every subtle reveal, every reaction I wanted to provoke. Lunch came. The cafeteria was bustling, but I felt detached, focused on him. He sat with her, laughing casually, unaware of the web closing in. I kept my distance, observing silently, letting colleagues notice too. Little remarks, casual comments, small hints. Everyone began to see cracks. Back at my desk, I opened my carefully prepared folder. Proof of betrayal. Undeniable evidence. Images, messages, notes. All compiled with precision. I smiled, knowing he could not deny anything. Every secret laid bare. It was perfect, just the way I had imagined. I sent subtle hints to colleagues. Small remarks about missing documents. Overlooked details. Rumors began to swirl quietly, just enough for attention, suspicion, discomfort. I noticed him shifting in his chair, unease creeping into his posture. The first cracks of panic appeared, just as I had planned. A client call distracted everyone for a moment, leaving only him and me in the office. I walked past his desk, casually, letting my presence loom. He looked up, and I could see it. The flicker of worry, recognition, maybe even guilt. It was satisfying, knowing the invisible power I wielded. The afternoon dragged on. Every small interaction layered tension. Every email a trap. I observed reactions from the sidelines, letting colleagues think they were discovering things themselves. The beauty of subtle revenge is that it feels organic, to everyone but the target. Finally, the moment arrived. The meeting room was empty, just us. I closed the door behind me, took a deep breath, feeling the weight of anticipation. He looked at me, confused, nervous, a hint of recognition in his eyes. "I think it's time we talk," I said calmly, voice steady, deliberate. He swallowed, hesitant, unsure of what was coming. "I know everything," I continued, letting the words sink in. His eyes widened, a flicker of panic, but he tried to mask it. I laid out the evidence carefully. Every message, every note, every subtle interaction. He couldn't interrupt, couldn't deny. The truth was undeniable. I watched as comprehension dawned on his face, the realization of how completely he had been exposed. His facade crumbled slowly, humiliation creeping in. "I trusted you, more than anyone," I said quietly, letting the weight of betrayal linger. He looked down, unable to meet my eyes, words failing him. I let silence fill the room. It was heavier than any confrontation could be. Weeks of subtle manipulations, observation, and patient planning had led to this moment. And now, the outcome was in motion. Irreversible. Undeniable. He felt powerless. Exposed. Just as I had felt after discovering the betrayal. The confrontation was not loud, not dramatic, just precise, controlled. Revenge, I realized, isn't about spectacle. It's about reclaiming dignity, making the betrayer feel the weight of their choices. After the meeting, I walked back to my desk, calm, composed. Colleagues noticed something had changed. Subtle glances, quiet murmurs. The office dynamics had shifted. The balance of power subtly altered. He avoided my gaze. Careful, polite, distant. No more casual smiles. No more innocent touches. I had reclaimed my space, my trust restored in myself. But it wasn't without cost. I felt the weight of obsession, the intensity of emotion, the mental toll. That evening, I left the office slowly, reflecting on the events. Revenge had been executed. Precise, controlled, effective. But I realized it didn't erase the hurt. It didn't undo the betrayal. It only allowed me to reclaim a sense of power, dignity, closure. The weekend came, and life felt different. Lighter in a strange way. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumph, just a quiet acceptance. Some wounds are never fully healed. but they can be acknowledged, managed, survived. I thought about the lessons learned, about trust, about vigilance, about the dangerous allure of betrayal. And I understood. Revenge is not just about payback. It's about reclaiming yourself, setting boundaries, ensuring that the person who hurt you cannot hurt you again. Weeks turned into months, and the office returned to a new normal. He remained distant, polite but constrained, a shadow of his former self around me. I had the satisfaction of quiet control, the reassurance that my dignity was intact. But sometimes, late at night, I replayed the events, questioned the choices I made. Was the revenge necessary? Could I have confronted him differently? Regret and satisfaction coexist, two sides of the same coin. In the end, I learned that betrayal changes people, and so does revenge. Some bonds cannot be mended. Some wounds cannot fully heal. But you survive. You grow. You reclaim your life, piece by piece. And that's when I understood. The story isn't just about revenge. It's about resilience, self-respect, and the quiet strength to rise after being broken. I never saw it coming. Not in a million years. It started with a subtle message. When I wasn't supposed to see, I glanced at his phone while he stepped away. Curiosity and suspicion mixing dangerously, the screen lit up with words that froze my blood. Her name, over and over. Intimate, secretive, and unmistakable. I blinked, thinking I was imagining things. But the proof was right there, clear as day. A text from him calling her my love. My world shattered in an instant. I stood there, heart pounding, chest tight, unable to breathe. I felt dizzy, as if the floor had disappeared beneath me. Shock is a strange thing. It numbs you, then burns you slowly. I replayed the messages in my mind, over and over. Every laugh, every shared coffee, every late-night project together. Had it all been a lie? The betrayal hit deeper than I expected, deeper than any words could describe. I wanted to scream, confront him immediately, demand answers. But my voice caught in my throat, fear mingling with pain. What if he denied it? What if I looked crazy? Doubt clawed at me, the mind trying to rationalize something irrational. I told myself to breathe, to wait, to observe. But every second felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I started noticing things I had missed before, little moments that now made sense. The stolen glances, whispered conversations, extra hours he never mentioned. I had trusted him completely, shared my life openly, confided my secrets. And all along, he had been hiding this from me. The realization made my hands shake, a mix of rage and sorrow. I couldn't focus at work. My mind replayed every detail, every smile, every joke. Colleagues noticed my distraction, whispered behind my back. I tried to appear normal, laugh at casual remarks, answer questions. But the betrayal was a shadow, following me everywhere, heavy, suffocating. I thought about confronting her. Her face, her smile, her laughter in my head. I imagined the words I would say, accusations sharp and precise. But I hesitated. Fear of escalation. Fear of consequences. I couldn't afford to act recklessly. Someone might notice. Suspicion could fall on me. The seed of revenge was planted. Quietly, almost innocently, a tiny flicker of thought, growing steadily, waiting for the right moment. The evening came. I stayed home alone, replaying everything. I stared at the ceiling, heart racing, mind racing even faster. Anger mixed with disbelief. Betrayal mixed with sorrow. I felt powerless. The world had turned upside down. And yet, a part of me whispered, "Don't stay." I started making notes, little plans in my notebook. Every detail mattered. Every tiny piece of evidence. I wanted clarity, a map to guide me, revenge forming slowly, deliberately. It wasn't about impulsive anger. It was about strategy, precision, satisfaction. I imagined the consequences, the shock on their faces, the ripple effect in the office. The thrill of danger started to excite me. A dangerous game I was ready to play. The next morning, I arrived early, pretending everything was normal. He greeted me with a casual smile, and my chest tightened. I wanted to lash out, scream, accuse, humiliate. But I stayed calm, measured, watching carefully. Every reaction he gave now mattered. Every twitch, every glance. I was learning his weaknesses, noting vulnerabilities, storing ammunition for the moment of reckoning. I realized revenge is not just about pain. It's about power, reclaiming what was stolen. I reminded myself, one wrong move and it could all backfire. What if someone finds out it was me? The thought sent shivers down my spine. Risk made the plan thrilling, dangerous, irresistible. By midweek, I had begun subtle moves. First, small acts of disruption. A misfiled report here, a delayed email there. Nothing obvious, but enough to rattle him. Small ripples in the calm surface. I watched quietly, colleagues beginning to sense tension. Rumors forming naturally, every action calculated, every response observed. A chess game I was determined to win. One afternoon, I found another message left open accidentally. A new thread. Undeniable evidence of intimacy. I copied it secretly, careful not to leave a trace. My heart raced. The adrenaline intoxicating. This was proof. Proof that would ensure my plan couldn't fail. The betrayal was now undeniable, irreversible. And the first move of revenge could finally take shape. That evening, I sat alone, going over every detail, every possible outcome. I planned every step carefully, imagining their reactions, imagining the ripple effects. I knew the risk was high. Any mistake could expose me. But the thrill of control, of reclaiming power, made it impossible to stop. I rehearsed conversations in my head, possible confrontations, subtle humiliations, exposure at just the right time. I imagined him panicking, her confusion and shame, the colleagues watching, whispers spreading. The satisfaction of quiet, calculated revenge consumed my thoughts. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice. Reclaiming dignity stolen by betrayal. By the weekend, I felt ready for the first move. Subtle, almost invisible. I wasn't acting recklessly, each action carefully considered, measured, precise. The consequences would ripple naturally, tension growing, anticipation building. I knew the moment of confrontation was approaching, inevitable, unavoidable. Monday came again, but I was no longer the same. The betrayal had changed me, sharpened my focus, fueled my mind with a dangerous clarity. Every glance at him, every interaction was now loaded with calculation. I observed his movements, memorized routines, recorded small habits in my mind. I started creating a mental map of his relationships. Who he trusted, who trusted him. Every small weakness could be used strategically. I thought about exposing subtle lies, manipulating situations to make him feel vulnerable. The thrill of danger made my pulse race. I knew the risks, but I couldn't stop. I rehearsed my moves mentally, imagining how he would react. Every conversation, every casual remark, had to be precise. A wrong word, a wrong glance, and it could all blow up. The thought excited me. Fear and thrill intertwined. By midweek, I had gathered pieces of evidence carefully, messages, notes, small interactions, all quietly stored, ready for the right moment. I even started planting minor hints, small signs that colleagues could notice. Nothing overt, subtle enough that suspicion would grow naturally. It was like watching dominoes line up, waiting for the push. Each night, I went over every detail again. I imagined her reactions, his panic, colleagues noticing the tension. Every scenario played in my head. Consequences measured. Risks calculated. I was creating a plan that was precise, almost surgical. Then came the first risky move. An email accidentally lost. It contained minor information he needed urgently. I watched from a distance, pretending to focus on my work. He panicked, scrambling to fix it. Small but significant. The ripple had begun. Tension spreading. My first taste of subtle control. The following day, I noticed him glancing nervously at me. A flicker of doubt in his eyes. Suspicion creeping in. It was exhilarating, knowing he had no idea who was orchestrating this. I kept my calm exterior, polite, professional, unassuming. Inside, I was a storm, building, controlled, unstoppable. I began leaving subtle notes for colleagues. Vague hints about inconsistencies. Rumors spread quietly. People whispering. Nothing traced back to me. It was beautiful, watching chaos form naturally, invisible strings in my hands. The next risky step involved a misfiled report. Critical for a presentation. He noticed only moments before the client call. Panic evident on his face. I offered help casually, masking satisfaction. Watching him scramble. The helplessness. It was intoxicating. Revenge was no longer an idea. It was tangible, immediate, thrilling. That evening, I reviewed my progress. Each small disruption recorded in my mind. I visualized the big reveal. The final exposure. The moment he would understand the depth of betrayal. But with each step, the risk increased. Someone could notice. Suspicion could fall on me. The thrill was dangerous, and I craved it. I began using colleagues subtly, planting ideas in their heads. Not accusations, just hints, enough to make them notice irregularities. The office began to shift subtly, tension building without anyone knowing why. I remained calm, silent puppet master, orchestrating without exposure. Late one afternoon, I found another message he had carelessly left open. This one was more intimate. Undeniable proof of closeness with her. I copied it carefully, making sure no trace remained. The evidence was growing. My power increasing. My plan gaining momentum. By Friday, I knew the first major confrontation was near. I could feel it in the office atmosphere. Colleagues noticing subtle tension. Glances exchanged quietly. Every move had led to this moment. The first significant ripple of revenge. I imagined him realizing panic, guilt, helplessness. The exact feeling he had caused me. I rehearsed my approach, measured every word, every gesture. The social danger was real. If someone found out it was me, the consequences could be devastating. But the thrill outweighed the fear. The meticulous planning gave me confidence. I felt unstoppable, prepared, a quiet storm ready to break. And so, the weekend became a time for final preparations. I organized evidence, notes, messages, minor mistakes I had engineered. Every detail was perfect. Every small disruption accounted for. I could feel the tension building, ready to explode at the first strategic moment. Sunday night, I lay awake thinking about the next week. Every step, every plan, every calculated move played in my mind. I knew once the first domino fell, the rest would follow. The thrill was intoxicating, dangerous, necessary. I couldn't turn back now. The seed of revenge had grown, and the first strike was imminent. Monday morning felt heavier than ever. I arrived early, pretending normalcy, but my mind was sharp, focused. Every glance at him now carried meaning. Every casual interaction carefully analyzed. The betrayal still burned inside me. Anger and hurt mixed with determination. The first major move of revenge was subtle, yet effective. I sent a carefully worded email to a client, hinting at a missed deadline. It was minor, almost innocent on the surface, but enough to make him panic, scramble, and show cracks in confidence. I watched from a distance, pretending to type, pretending to focus. The tension in his movements thrilled me. The first taste of control after weeks of planning. Colleagues noticed too. Subtle whispers, puzzled glances, small murmurs. I smiled politely, hiding satisfaction behind calm eyes. By mid-morning, he was visibly distracted, stressed. I caught him glancing at me, suspicion flickering, but he couldn't pinpoint why. It was exhilarating. The power shift so delicate, so precise. I knew I had to maintain composure. One wrong move, and the plan could collapse. The evidence I had gathered was now crucial. I had messages, notes, and minor manipulations ready, each one carefully positioned to create maximum effect. I imagined the moment he realized he was exposed. Panic and shame flooding in. During lunch, I subtly mentioned inconsistencies to a few colleagues. Nothing direct, just casual observations, subtle enough to make them curious. By the afternoon, whispers were spreading, tension building naturally. He began to notice small cracks appearing in his confident facade. That evening, I engineered a small confrontation, indirect, enough to make him anxious, A client called. Urgent questions. He stumbled. I remained calm, collected. Every mistake noted. Every hesitation recorded in my mind. The ripple of consequences was spreading, expanding, unstoppable. At home, I reviewed every interaction of the day, replaying his reactions. The satisfaction of seeing him falter was addictive, but I reminded myself the plan required patience, precision. Revenge is a game of strategy, not impulse. I had to stay controlled. By midweek, tension in the office reached a new level. He was distracted, unsure of what to trust. Colleagues exchanging knowing looks. I observed quietly, noting every twitch, every glance, every subtle shift in behavior. It was thrilling, the invisible web tightening around him. Then came another risky move. A small accidental exposure of intimate messages to someone he respected. He didn't notice at first, but whispers began to circulate quietly. Subtle looks, quiet questions, suspicion forming organically. I remained invisible, a silent puppeteer orchestrating chaos. He finally approached me privately, a mix of panic and confusion in his eyes. "What's going on?" he asked cautiously, voice low, nervous. I smiled calmly, pretending innocence, letting the tension build naturally. "You know what I'm talking about," I said softly, letting him stew in uncertainty. He recoiled slightly, realization dawning slowly, panic beginning to take hold. The personal danger now became real. If anyone discovered my involvement, the consequences could be severe. Professional reputation ruined. But the thrill, the control, the justice I was enacting outweighed fear. Each move carefully calculated, measured, precise. By Friday, he was on edge, distracted, hesitant in every action. Even minor tasks made him nervous. Colleagues noticing the shift in confidence. I continued subtly manipulating small events. Emails delayed. Reports misfiled. Every ripple built toward the eventual climax. The confrontation that would seal the plan. I rehearsed the confrontation mentally. Every word, every gesture. I imagined him panicking, helpless, exposed before everyone. The thrill was intoxicating, dangerous, addictive. But I remained careful, patient, letting the tension grow naturally. Late one afternoon, I overheard them talking in the hallway. Casual words, masking intimacy. I recorded subtle details in my mind. Evidence for the final strike. The personal danger was always present. Someone could notice my orchestration. But I felt invincible. Careful, invisible, untouchable. By the weekend, I knew the first major consequence had landed successfully. He had begun to crumble under subtle pressure, anxiety evident in every glance. The seed of chaos had taken root, ripples spreading quietly, deliberately, and I felt satisfaction. Not joy, but the control had returned to me. I spent the weekend reviewing the next phase. The final moves. Every detail mattered. Timing, witnesses, exposure. The thrill of danger kept me awake. Planning meticulously, refining every interaction. I reminded myself, patience now ensures maximum impact later. By the time Monday arrived, the office had shifted. The tension noticeable to all. He moved carefully, watched colleagues more closely, avoided eye contact. I watched quietly, my presence a constant, silent reminder of power reclaimed. Monday arrived and the office felt charged. Like electricity in the air. I arrived early, coffee in hand. Eyes scanning, calculating. He walked in, unaware, smiling politely at colleagues. A mask of calm he could no longer maintain. By mid-morning, the first real confrontation was unavoidable. I had prepared carefully. The evidence, the timing, every subtle setup. I couldn't rush it. One mistake and the consequences would fall on me. He approached me nervously during a meeting break. "Can we talk?" he asked quietly, voice strained, almost pleading. I nodded slowly, letting him stew in his own anxiety. Patience is power, I reminded myself, and the moment had to be perfect. We stepped into a quiet corner of the office. Tension heavy, palpable. I handed him a folder, his name on top. Small, precise handwriting. He opened it slowly, eyes widening as messages, notes, and interactions unfolded. The betrayal was undeniable. The proof irrefutable. I watched his reactions carefully, every twitch, every gulp, every shifting glance. He was panicking. The mask had fallen. Vulnerability exposed. This was the moment I had been waiting for. Patience and planning converging perfectly. I felt a strange thrill. Fear, anger, and satisfaction blending. "Do you see now?" I asked calmly, letting the words sink slowly. He swallowed hard, unable to meet my eyes. Shaking slightly. I didn't mean for this to happen," he murmured, voice trembling. His excuses fell flat. The evidence spoke louder than words. The personal danger was immediate. Colleagues nearby could sense tension. Any wrong move, and suspicion could trace back to me. But I stayed composed. Neutral, professional, untouchable. Inside, a storm raged. The culmination of weeks of planning. By mid-afternoon, the ripples began to spread. Colleagues noticed his agitation. Whispered quietly. The first hints of office gossip forming. I remained calm, watching the subtle chaos unfold. Every small disruption, every hint I planted now played its role perfectly. I caught him reviewing emails anxiously. Every movement careful, tentative. The first consequences of my revenge had hit. And he could feel them. It was thrilling, dangerous, intoxicating. I reminded myself of the stakes. Exposure could ruin me. Yet control felt like power. He finally approached me again, voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, confusion and fear mingling. I smiled calmly, letting him wrestle with uncertainty. "Because you should have never betrayed me," I replied softly, deliberate, precise. Every day after that, he was cautious, guarded, unsure of whom to trust. The subtle fear I had instilled was working. The dominoes falling exactly as planned. Even small tasks made him tense. Every glance over his shoulder, every hesitation noticeable. Colleagues whispered, noticing the shift. Tension building naturally. By the end of the week, he was visibly shaken, stressed, distracted, and uncertain. Every move I made continued to amplify the consequences. Emails slightly delayed, reports misfiled, small rumors subtly hinted. Each action orchestrated to create maximum pressure without leaving traceable evidence. I felt a strange mix of exhilaration and exhaustion. The thrill of risk balanced with the weight of planning. The danger was real. Any slip-up could expose me. Yet the sense of justice, of reclaiming control over the betrayal, outweighed fear. Late Friday afternoon, I observed them both in the hallway. She laughed softly at something he said. Their intimacy, undeniable. I recorded every detail mentally, the evidence for the next phase of my plan growing stronger. The personal and social danger loomed constantly. One wrong move could undo everything. That evening, I reflected on the week's events. The first major confrontation had been executed perfectly. Ripples spread quietly, but effectively. His panic visible, colleagues noticing subtle tension. I had gained control, but the plan was far from over. I reviewed every possible scenario in my head. Every outcome, every reaction. The thrill of anticipation mixed with the anxiety of exposure. The first move had succeeded. Now the next phase, more risky and precise, needed to follow. The weekend became a planning session. Mental rehearsals of confrontation and exposure. Every detail, every word, every timing carefully considered. I knew the next move would escalate consequences. The stakes higher, yet excitement mingled with fear. The thrill of danger too intoxicating to ignore. By Monday, tension was at its peak. He avoided eye contact, shuffled papers nervously, colleagues whispering softly. Every small interaction now carried weight. Every movement observed. I remained calm. The eye of the storm, patience, control, power fully in my hands. And I realized, revenge is more than retaliation. It is strategy, patience, precision, subtlety, and risk combined. The consequences ripple slowly, socially, personally, emotionally. And now, the stage was set for the next, unavoidable escalation. The office was unusually quiet that morning. I arrived early, calm on the surface, heart racing beneath. Today was the day everything would change. The culmination of weeks of planning and observation. Every detail, every subtle manipulation, every ripple of tension had led to this moment. He walked in, casual smile, oblivious. I followed him with my eyes, noting every step, every glance. Colleagues greeted him, unaware of the storm about to hit. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the calm before the chaos. The first move was subtle, the folder left on his desk, visible to him but unnoticed by others. He picked it up, frowned, flipping it open, the evidence laid bare. I leaned against the doorway, casual, professional, hiding satisfaction behind neutral eyes. "You're going to want to look at this carefully," I said softly, letting the tension linger. He froze, scanning every page. Messages, notes, pictures. Undeniable proof of betrayal. What is this?" he whispered, panic creeping in. "Everything you've tried to hide is right here," I replied calmly, his face drained of color. Shock, fear, and disbelief mixing. I walked closer, careful not to make sudden movements. "You lied to me, betrayed me," my voice low, cutting. "I trusted you more than anyone," I continued, letting the words settle heavily. He swallowed hard, eyes darting around. "Seeking help, finding none?" "Please, I can explain," he stammered, voice trembling. "Explain?" I asked softly, voice calm, but venom underneath. "You think words can fix this?" I said, cutting each syllable sharply. He went silent, realization dawning, horror spreading across his face. Colleagues began to notice, whispers forming quietly, subtle glances, tension building in the room. He realized humiliation was public now, subtle but undeniable. I remained calm, composed. "The eye of the storm? You're not going to get away with this," he muttered, anger starting to flare. I shook my head slowly, disappointment heavy in my tone.
"No."
"Not this time," I said simply, letting him feel the weight of every betrayal. He looked at me, desperate, helpless. The power had shifted completely. The next wave was social. I subtly mentioned inconsistencies to colleagues. Quiet, measured remarks. They began connecting dots. Whispers growing louder. Subtle looks, curious questions. He flinched with every glance. The tension mounting. I watched him carefully, every reaction feeding the climax. Then came the cutting dialogue. The final confrontation in private. "You thought I would notice," I said quietly, almost a whisper. "I saw everything," he tried to interrupt, but I silenced him with a glance. "You ruined what we had," I continued, deliberate, calm. His lips trembled, eyes filled with panic. "I never meant to hurt you," he pleaded, desperation thick in his voice. "You didn't mean to?" I repeated sharply, letting the words linger. "You lied, you cheated, you betrayed my trust." My voice broke slightly, raw, real, heavy. He didn't respond. No words could undo what had been done. The climax built as I handed copies of the evidence to select colleagues. Neutral, polite, professional. "Take a look for yourselves," I said softly. Whispers erupted slowly, eyes widened. Subtle shock spreading throughout the office. He realized the betrayal was no longer hidden, completely exposed. I felt a mix of satisfaction and exhaustion. The culmination of weeks of planning now realized. Every small manipulation, every subtle disruption, every strategic move had led here. The power balance had shifted. The betrayal avenged. Justice, subtle but undeniable, achieved. He stumbled backward, trying to regain composure. Failing. "You'll regret this," he muttered, voice low, trembling with anger. "I already regret trusting you," I replied simply, short, cutting, precise. The room felt heavier, charged with tension. The consequences of betrayal now visible for all. Even after the confrontation, subtle chaos continued. Colleagues whispered quietly. Glances exchanged. The atmosphere tense. I remained composed, calm, collected, untouchable. Inside, my heart raced, adrenaline and satisfaction mingling. I realized revenge was more than retribution. It was restoration. Restoration of dignity, of control, of self-respect. The climax was not dramatic fireworks, not shouting or tears. It was quiet, deliberate, precise, heavy, believable, cutting. By afternoon, the office was forever changed. He avoided eye contact, walked carefully, hesitant, nervous. Colleagues kept distance. Subtle reminders of the disruption I had orchestrated. I sat at my desk calmly, sipping coffee slowly, pretending nothing had changed. I had delivered the final blow. Subtle, controlled, untraceable in many ways. But the emotional weight remained. Heavy.
Deep.
undeniable. Betrayal had consequences. Calculated revenge had consequences too. The climax had been reached. The storm executed perfectly. The morning after the first exposure, the office felt charged. Every glance, every step measured. I arrived early, calm on the surface, heart racing beneath. Today was the day the full consequences would unfold. Every piece of the plan coming together. He walked in, cautious, guarded, eyes darting. Colleagues avoided his gaze, whispers subtle but sharp. Tension thick in the air. I sipped my coffee slowly, savoring the anticipation. Each moment a small victory. I called him to the conference room. The folder waiting. Evidence meticulously organized. He entered pale, hesitant. Sit. I said simply, voice calm measured. He obeyed, silent, eyes wide. Panic creeping in slowly. I warned you before. I began quietly, letting the words cut deep. You never took me seriously, never considered the consequences. He swallowed hard, trying to speak. I didn't mean. Don't. I interrupted sharply, letting the silence stretch. Heavy, suffocating. I spread the evidence across the table. Messages, notes, pictures, all undeniable. His hands trembled as he picked up the papers. Fear and shame plain on his face. You lied to me every step of the way, I said, voice low, precise. You thought no one would find out, that you could get away with it. He swallowed again, eyes darting to the door. Colleagues outside beginning to notice subtle tension. Please, it's not what you think, he pleaded, desperation thick in his voice. Not what I think, I repeated sharply, letting each word sting. Yes, everything you've done is here. Exposed. Undeniable. The whispers outside grew louder. Tension building. Subtle chaos rippling through the office. I handed copies of the evidence to a few trusted colleagues, quietly. Professional, calm. They exchanged glances. Nodded slowly. The social consequences, now unavoidable. He realized. Fully, finally, the scope of exposure. Panic spread across his face. His composure shattered. You can't do this, he shouted suddenly, voice rising. I already have, I said simply, short-cutting, letting the words linger. The room felt heavier. Every breath charged. Colleagues unsure where to look. I continued calmly, deliberately. You broke the trust that held us together. Now feel the consequences. His fists clenched, lips trembling, unable to speak. Powerless. I watched as he tried to process. The fear, the shame, the humiliation. Each colleague now aware, watching subtly, whispers like a low tide. I smiled politely. Neutral exterior, hiding the storm inside. This was the culmination, the peak of the plan. Revenge executed perfectly. He finally sat down, head in hands, muttering under his breath. I never meant to hurt you. Intentions don't erase actions, I said quietly, voice sharp, deliberate. He flinched at the words, the weight of truth settling on him. The afternoon dragged on. The ripple effect unstoppable now. Emails flagged, minor mistakes exposed. Colleagues quietly adjusting to the tension. He moved carefully, nervously, avoiding my gaze. I observed quietly, calculating the next subtle strike. Each small move increasing pressure. By late afternoon, he cornered me briefly in the hallway. You've gone too far, he hissed, voice low, trembling. I've only gone as far as the betrayal required, I replied calmly. His eyes widened, anger and fear clashing. You'll regret this, he muttered, voice low, almost a whisper. I already regret trusting you, I said softly, cutting. Final. He recoiled slightly, the truth undeniable. Panic and helplessness clear. The office atmosphere shifted completely, whispers and glances everywhere. Subtle judgment forming. Even as the day ended, the impact remained. Colleagues kept distance. Tension radiated quietly. He walked out slowly, shoulders slumped, composure fractured. I stayed behind at my desk, calm, sipping coffee slowly, heart still racing. I reflected on the execution. Every small step, every subtle manipulation, every psychological blow. The revenge was complete, precise, calculated, dramatic, but believable. No shouting, no chaos. Just controlled, cutting precision. And yet, I felt the emotional weight. Heavy, suffocating, lingering. Revenge satisfied some need. But it didn't erase betrayal completely. The personal and social consequences had taken hold. And I felt the depth of that responsibility. By evening, the ripple effects were undeniable. He avoided the office paths I took. Colleagues whispering quietly, tension thick. The final revenge had landed. Subtle, controlled, dramatic, and irreversible. I realized revenge is a balance between satisfaction and cost. Every calculated move carries emotional weight. Every exposure leaves scars. The climax was here. The storm executed perfectly. The morning was tense, heavier than ever. I arrived early, calm on the outside, storm raging inside. Today, the final pieces would fall into place. The ultimate moment of reckoning. He entered the office cautiously, eyes darting, shoulders tense. Colleagues avoided his gaze, whispers circulating quietly, tension thick in the air. I sipped coffee slowly, each sip deliberate, savoring the quiet before the storm. I called him into the conference room again, folder in hand, evidence ready. His hands shook slightly as he approached, pale, hesitant. I gestured to the chair, opposite mine. Sit. My voice calm, cold, precise. He obeyed, silent, panic creeping into every movement. I laid out the final pieces. The compiled messages, notes, and subtle manipulations. Each page a nail in the coffin of his deception. You thought you could hide this forever, I said softly, letting each word land heavily. His eyes widened, dread pooling like ice in his veins. You can't show this to anyone, he stammered, desperation heavy in his voice. I already have, I said simply, short cutting, letting the silence stretch. He swallowed hard, realizing his helplessness. The magnitude of exposure undeniable. I leaned closer, voice low, venomous but controlled. You lied, cheated, betrayed everything we shared. He flinched at the words, guilt and fear intertwining visibly on his face. You thought no one would find out. You thought you could control everything. I didn't mean to hurt you, he whispered, voice trembling. Intentions don't erase actions. I shot back sharply, his eyes filled with panic. He realized the depth of his vulnerability. Colleagues began noticing subtle tension outside the room. Whispers, curious glances. I spread copies of the evidence to a few trusted colleagues. Neutral, polite, professional. Their reactions were subtle but telling. Eyes widened, murmurs exchanged. He froze, realizing humiliation and exposure were inevitable. Power had shifted completely. The tables turned in ways he could never reverse. Why are you doing this? He demanded, voice low, almost desperate. Because you should have never betrayed me, I replied calmly, cutting, precise. He swallowed again, anger and fear clashing visibly. You'll regret this, he hissed, trembling. I already regret trusting you, I said softly, short, final. The whispers outside grew louder, subtle chaos spreading through the office. He paced nervously, avoiding my gaze, each glance over his shoulder betraying panic. Every subtle move I had orchestrated was now rippling into full effect. Emails delayed, minor mistakes exposed, office gossip forming naturally, the consequences multiplying. I watched carefully, observing his every twitch, every shift, every falter. The thrill of control mixed with adrenaline and the weight of betrayal. This was the ultimate payoff. The apex of planning, patience, and precision. No dramatic shouting needed. Just quiet, cutting, undeniable truth. He finally sank into a chair, head in hands, muttering under his breath, I never thought it would end like this. You made it end like this, I said softly, deliberately, each word sharp. His hands trembled, shoulders sagged, composure gone, powerless. The office itself seemed transformed. Colleagues whispering quietly, eyes darting. He avoided the paths I walked, hesitant, cautious, tension radiating around him. I remained calm at my desk, sipping coffee slowly, heart still racing. The ultimate betrayal had landed. Revenge executed perfectly, controlled, precise, irreversible. By afternoon, I reflected quietly. Every step, every subtle move, every manipulation had led here. The storm was complete, yet heavy, emotional, and lingering. Betrayal leaves scars. Revenge carries weight. The personal cost was real, but satisfaction, subtle and complete, remained. He avoided me completely now. Polite, distant, fearful of further exposure. Colleagues kept subtle distance, whispers and glances hinting at his fall. The final act of betrayal had shifted the balance permanently. Control, dignity, and justice were claimed slowly, quietly, and decisively. Even as the adrenaline faded, the consequences remained. The office dynamic changed. Subtle but permanent. I realized revenge is never just about action. It is about patience, timing, and psychological precision. The emotional fallout was heavy, deep, undeniable. That evening I sat alone, replaying every word, every gesture, every glance. The ultimate revenge was complete. Dramatic, cutting, believable. No dramatic yelling, no chaotic explosions. Just quiet, precise, emotionally devastating truth. And for the first time in weeks, I felt control. Power reclaimed, dignity restored. The storm had passed, but the scars remained. He would never look at me or the office the same way again. The colleagues who witnessed subtle ripples would never forget the tension. And I, quietly, sat with the knowledge that justice, cold and precise, had been served. The office felt different after that week. Quieter, but tense in a way that lingered. I walked the same halls. Colleagues glanced at me subtly, whispers still in the air. The storm had passed, but the traces remained. Shadows of betrayal, ripples of revenge. He avoided me completely now. Careful, distant, polite only when necessary. I watched him occasionally, once confident, now cautious, fractured. The satisfaction of revenge was there. Undeniable, precise, deliberate. But it was quiet, subtle, not triumphant in a loud way. I reflected on what I had done. Every small manipulation, every calculated move. Weeks of tension, planning, observation. The emotional energy spent. Revenge had been satisfying in some ways. Justice delivered. Dignity reclaimed. But satisfaction came with weight. Scars that didn't fade. I realized revenge doesn't erase betrayal. It transforms it. The pain still exists, now mixed with the tension of power reclaimed. Sometimes the mind dwells on what could have been, the life before deception. Other times, it marvels at survival, resilience, strength discovered in chaos. Colleagues slowly returned to routine. Subtle adjustments in behavior. He never regained confidence fully. Subtle glances revealed lingering awareness of exposure. The office felt reorganized by invisible forces, tension woven into its fabric. And I was aware. Every moment, every interaction marked by the events that had unfolded. At home, the nights were long. I lay awake replaying moments. Choices made, words spoken. Some nights, I felt a hollow satisfaction, a quiet relief that justice had been done. Other nights, the emptiness weighed heavily. Revenge doesn't fix everything. It leaves questions, scars. I thought about trust, about how fragile it can be, how easily it can shatter, and how betrayal changes both the betrayer and the betrayed. I had walked a dangerous path, obsessed with precision, control, and timing, and I had emerged intact, but changed, heavier in ways subtle but permanent. The first month after the confrontation passed slowly. Colleagues kept polite distance. Whispers subsided but never vanished completely. He avoided the spaces I occupied. Silent acknowledgement of the shift in balance. And I realized, control and revenge came at the cost of perpetual awareness. I reflected on my own emotions. The anger, the hurt, the calculated planning. Some nights I wept quietly. Grief for the relationship lost, for trust betrayed. Other nights I felt quiet pride that I had navigated a complex web successfully. It was a strange mixture, satisfaction and emptiness intertwined. I thought about what I had learned. Patience, observation, strategy, subtlety. Revenge requires mental energy, emotional resilience, and sometimes moral compromise. The cost is never just to the target. It lingers within the seeker as well. And I felt the echoes of that cost quietly in my chest. Colleagues eventually resumed normal work routines. Subtle glances remaining. Subtle tension beneath the surface. He continued carefully, never again so confident, always wary of errors, always aware of consequences. The office dynamic shifted permanently, the story woven invisibly into its fabric. I often thought about the what-ifs. Could I have confronted differently? Forgiven? Walked away? But reflection also brought clarity. The actions were necessary. the precision deliberate. Some revenge satisfies. Others leave scars. Mine did both. It brought justice and control, but left emotional weight that could not be ignored. At night, when the world was quiet, I replayed moments silently. The betrayal, the planning, the confrontation, the aftermath. I realized the story was not just about revenge. It was about resilience, self-respect, and survival. The scars remain, but so does the strength gained from navigating them. I understood now. Trust is fragile, and betrayal leaves marks that time cannot fully erase. Revenge can reclaim dignity. It can restore a sense of control, but it does not erase pain. It does not fully restore what was lost. It changes you, subtly, permanently. Sometimes I feel relief, a quiet victory in the calm. Other times, emptiness, the hollow echo of what had been. But I survived, navigated chaos, reclaimed dignity, faced betrayal head-on. And that is something no one can take away. The office carried on. Life continued quietly. Colleagues moved on subtly. Whispers faded into routine. He remained distant, cautious, a shadow of his former self. And I remained aware, quiet, composed, reflective. The storm settled, but never gone completely. In the end, the story is not just about betrayal or revenge. It is about the cost of human emotion, the weight of justice, the scars that linger. Some revenge satisfies. Some leaves wounds. And I carry both. Quietly, deliberately, forever aware of what was lost and what was reclaimed. If you've ever experienced betrayal or faced someone who broke your trust, you know how powerful emotions can be. Stories like this remind us of the weight of actions and the consequences they carry. I'd love to hear your thoughts. How would you have reacted in this situation? Share your experiences in the comments below. Quietly, openly, without judgment. And if this story resonated with you, consider subscribing for more real, emotional storytime videos. No pressure, just a space to reflect and connect with